was Good evening, everyone. I'm Syed Hamid Hassan, and I'm founder of Edjobster. And we welcome all of you to this session today on National Curriculum Framework for Foundational Years with our guest and speaker, Preethi Vickram. We have a lot of people who have registered for this event. We have received more than 700 registrations, and we are very grateful and thankful to all of you. And we think that not everybody will be able to join the session as we have only limit for 200 participants. But we have also made this session live on YouTube. So people who are not able to join, they can also join on YouTube as well to see the session live. We have shared the message of the YouTube live in WhatsApp, and also I'm going to share this in the chat as well, so all of you can also see this YouTube live. You can also share this with your other colleagues, friends, teachers, principals who want to join on YouTube live as well. So I have also shared the link for YouTube Live, and you can share that link with your friends, colleagues, and teachers as well. We will start in another 5 minutes as a lot of people are still joining. And I hope that you are having a very great year, start of your year. Happy New Year to every one of you. A few tips before we start the session for all of you. As it is an educational workshop on National Curriculum Framework, I would suggest and request all of you to have a notebook, have a pen to take notes of this workshop so you can use those notes to implement in the classroom in your learning process as well. evening, everyone, once again, all the people who have joined right now, and a lot of people who are joining. And we will be starting in another 2 minutes as all the people can join this session. We don't want anybody to miss this useful workshop on National Curriculum Framework, which is a framework under National Education Policy 2020, recently introduced by the Ministry of Education a month ago. And we want every teacher, every school principal to take benefit of this curriculum framework that which is created to understand what is new in the curriculum. Well, there are a lot of things that we are going to talk about which were talked about earlier, but but it was not into implementation. If we talk about critical thinking, activity-based learning, and a lot of different things. And this is just a framework for early childhood education for foundational year students. But will be more frameworks, three more frameworks for second middle years, primary years, and secondary years for children in the coming year. So these are the things which we are going to come up in the next sessions as the government will launch the new frameworks as well under the NEP, which we have done a lot of workshops of any on NEP as well. So to start with, I think our guest Miss Preethi has is having some technical issue. I'll just check with her and I'll just get back to you on this. As she joins, we will definitely start the session right away. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining for this session today. Well, wait until the end because we do have something for you by the end of session. We have some giveaway, something to give it to you as a gift from us. Let's Good evening, everyone. Our guest, Ms. Preeti, will be joining in just 2 minutes and then we will start the session. And I request all of you to have a notebook and a pen with yourself so you can take notes of it. And I have another request from you in case you see that the screen is frozen or you are not able to see anything as an attendee. So I want you to message in the chat box that you are not able to see. If you are even if you are not able to hear us, if even if you are not able to listen to the speaker or if the presentation is not visible. So you can definitely message it in the chat box so we can do check the technical issue because we are doing it on a new platform. So there might be some things. So it's always we try and test. So even in learning and teaching in the classroom, we do some experiments with some new techniques with the children. So the same way we are doing something today, and it's all for you. And I hope you will definitely take a lot of things from this live session. I We are just waiting for Miss Preeti to join. She might have some technical issue from our end. everyone. Are you able to see me? If you can see me, just type yes in the comment section. I think we are having some technical glitch over here from the platform that we are using, and Miss Preethi is trying to join, but there is some issue with it.
Good evening. I hope I'm audible and visible.
You are audible.
Finally.
Yes, you are visible too, ma'am. So, well, we are using a new platform, and I think it's learning that we should not use it again. Okay, so um you can't see us, ma'am. Can you please turn off your camera and then turn on, Miss Preeti?
Okay, I think we're good to begin. Let's start, and we can go ahead
Yeah,
and see how we can
it will be
possibly.
great. So let's start this session. Hello, everyone. I'm Sayed Hamid Hassan, and I'm founder of Edjobster. And we have this session on National Curriculum Framework for all the people who have attended, are mostly teachers or principal or educationists. And we have this session for you so you can know and take notes of what National Curriculum Framework is, what are the new things that is to be implemented in the classroom with the new guidelines of NEP and National Curriculum Framework. To start with, I would like to introduce you to our speaker today, Ms. Preethi Vickram. She is a passionate educationist and parenting coach. She has authored and presented papers on education and parenting globally. She is an experienced professional who has trained teachers, coached parents, and worked with government bodies in shaping policies. She is also a serial entrepreneur, having built three successful businesses in education, leadership mentoring, and training over the last 2 decades. I welcome Ms. Preethi Vikram to this session, and I thank her to take this workshop on National Curriculum Framework. I would like to now give the stage to Ms. Preethi and ask her to take this further and start this workshop. Over to you, Ms. Preethi.
Thank you for that introduction. I think we will not waste too much time with respect to the glitches that we've faced, and I hope that that is behind us, and the rest of the session is something that all of you can see and appreciate the content that we are presenting. So, thank you so much, Edjobster, for giving the opportunity to talk. I have kept the chat window open, so in case any of you have any questions, you can always put it up. I'll be happy to take it during the conversation, or when I feel that there is some content that will already answer the question, I will park it to the side. So I do hope that we have an engaging session. We have prepared a few polls so that you are able to kind of respond. So what I'm going to do is begin with a video that I love sharing with educators. So this is a video that I would want you to watch first, and I'm hoping that this platform allows for this video to be seen. I want you to watch this video first, and very quickly we will share our thoughts on what we observed in the video, and that you can do using the chat window, or if you can raise your hand, maybe we'll unmute you and allow a few of you to talk. So sharing the video now. Listen carefully. This is the writing department. Miss Mann, now the candy will pass by on this conveyor belt and continue into the next room where the girls will candies. Now your job is to take each piece of candy and wrap it in one of these papers and then put it back on the belt. You understand?
understand? Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. Roll. Wait here. Somebody that's leaving the switch. What are you doing up here? I thought you were downstairs boxing chocolates. Oh, they kicked me out of there fast. Why? I kept pinching them to see what kind they were. The fourth department I've been in. I didn't do so well either. All right, girls. Now this is your last chance. If one piece of candy gets past you and into the packing room unwrapped, you're fired. What's that? Oh. It's easier. Yeah, I can handle it. You're doing splendidly.
I hope that video was visible and it was audible to most of you. From the point of view of education, that context of education, what do you think this video represented? Was this um, who was the student? What was the student represented as? Who was the teacher? Did you see any connections to the education scenario? Put down your thoughts on the chat window on the question answer section. I'm able to see the chat, so I'll be able to do that. Or if you have something to share, if you would like to share your thoughts on this, do raise your hand and I think we can unmute you and allow you to speak. I will request Syed to help me with the unmuting part of it because this platform is a little new.
Yeah, so Miss Preeti, I think people on Zoho Meet were able to see or could see the video, but not on people who are watching it live on YouTube. And we will still continue with it. That's not a problem.
All right. So I see that there are 3 people who have raised hand. I don't know if it is now or if it is before the video that these hands were raised. So just want to know what your thoughts were. The 2 girls were students and the supervisor was the teacher. Interesting. Okay. The teacher is the employer. Chocolates are students. Pupils were the candy pieces. Employees are students. Okay. Interesting. Very interesting thoughts coming up. We have Pushpa who says the lack of the guidance given to students. Students were not clear about what has to be done. Okay. Very interesting thoughts. Too much information getting imparted. Yes, absolutely, Elsa. Thriving too many students, too many to a students may lead to confusion. The ladies, the students were the 2 ladies, and wrapping of the chocolates while teacher was the other lady who was giving instructions. That's interesting. So from most of you, what you have typed, so I'm going to try and encapsulate that. What I'm getting is that most of you think that the people who were wrapping, the 2 ladies who were wrapping the chocolate, they were students. and the chocolates were the information or the content that we present to students, and the person giving the instructions was the teacher. And if that is what all of you have thought of this, or maybe there are some other ways that you're seeing this, um, I think what you're what what did you see that went wrong? Is this an ideal classroom situation? What do you think can be different here? Already a few of you have messaged saying that the message has to be passed on in a proper way, not in a haphazard way. There was no guidance given to the people who had to wrap the chocolates, etc. I hope I'm audible because somebody is saying that the audio is very poor. I hope I'm audible. I think the students are confused with the instructions, trying to finish the assigned work without understanding the object. So many things that went wrong, and I'll share with you a few of these, and maybe you can agree or disagree in the chats. One thing that I find very discomforting here is that the expectations weren't set properly. As in, the teacher, who was in this context the supervisor, did not know what her students were capable of. I think when we go into a classroom, very often we go in without knowing what our students are capable of. So that was something that comes across many times when I discuss with educators about this video. The second thing I felt, and this has come across again many times, is that they weren't given proper instructions. They weren't given a demonstration of how it has to be done. So, obviously they're going to fail at the task given. Yes, and like some of you have said here, the lesson or the information that was going was too complicated. It wasn't something that children could grasp easily. So very often when we go into a classroom, this is also something we don't realize, that if I don't know where my students are at, how do I know what they are capable of learning? So I think this video I love because it reflects the current education system in a very funny manner. And I think, I mean, there's a lot that we could discuss about this video, and that itself could be a whole hour. But I think, yeah, the fear of getting fired and the consequences. Yes, absolutely. That is something that Elsa has again said, that they were threatened. And when I think as educators, most of you will know that when there is a threat, the brain shuts down and it goes into a fight or freeze mode. And it really, literally, learning does not happen, right? So this is something that again comes out through this video. So thank you all for sharing that. I want to end the discussion about this video by saying that finally it comes down to the intentionality of the teacher who's going into the classroom. So if the teacher's intentions are set right, if the teacher knows her students, and if she goes in with the intention of making a difference, I think that is enough. That is enough, right? So with the intention of learning from this session, let's move into understanding a little bit more about the National Curricular Framework. Give me a second while I share the presentation. So first thing is, I'd love to get to know a little bit more about you. I know my introduction was given, but I want to know a little bit more about all of you. So I am going to start a poll. You can respond to it. First thing that I would like to know is, what are you? If you can reply with whether are you a teacher, principal, vice principal, director, coordinator, or other, we'll be able to see the results immediately. We have about 50% of you who have already voted. Said, are we able to see the poll? Are you able to see the results as well? Okay, fantastic. I think we have about 70% who have responded, and I'm going to publish the results now so all of you can see for yourself. This is fantastic because about 73% of the people who have joined today, or at least the ones who have voted, are teachers. And that's fantastic because I think I love the teacher community. That's the most resilient community that we are part of. So thank you for that. Okay. The next thing I'd love to know about all of you is how many of you have had a chance to go through the NCF document, the NCF for foundational stage? How many of you have been able to go through that? I think this is a good mix. We have about 40% who've gone through the document and about 60% who are yet to go through it. So this is a good mix. This helps me to know how much in detail I should go regarding the discussion that we are having. So thank you for responding to this. I hope you're able to see the results. Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, moving on. Now that I know you a little better, my video has been turned off so that my audio quality can be improved. That's what the platform is telling me. But anyway, as long as you can see my screen and you're able to see the PPT, this is fantastic. So starting from the National Curricular Framework for Foundational Stage, I think what I like about this document, for the ones who haven't read it, what I like about this document is that it is written in very simple terminology. It is written keeping in mind that the teacher is the one reading it and should be able to implement it. So the entire document is from the perspective of a teacher. And I think that's fantastic because the NCF is looking to empower every teacher to be able to implement that very well. So I think that's the best part of the NCF for me. I figured out that I like the NCF for 5 different reasons. Now, before I go into why I love the NCF, again, a very quick poll. How many of you know what are the stages of the curriculum and pedagogy as per the NEP? And if you can let me know, what do you think are the stages that it prescribes? I know the poll seems a little confusing here because I think it's been broken up into 4 instead of just the 2 ways. But most of you have a sense of what is the right way. So I'm going to pause the poll here because I think it's not helping any of us understand better. So what I wanted to point out with respect to the first biggest change that the NEP has prescribed, and according to which we are looking at the curriculum also, is that the previous academic structure was 10 plus 2. That is the ages of 6 to 16 years, that's starting from grade 1 right up to grade 10. And then the 2 years of higher secondary, which is 16 to 18 years. So we've always known it to be 10 plus 2. Whereas the new pedagogical structure and the curriculum stages that has been defined by NEP is that of the 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4. So that's first 5 years starting from the child's 3rd year of life. That is right from the preschool age right up to kindergarten. That is the first 3 years, plus the 2 years of 1st and 2nd grade. That's the first 5 years called the foundational stage, for which the National Curricular Framework has been created. So this is very important for all of us to know because this is the basis of all learning. Now, what is, again, something that we should be rejoicing here is that Early childhood has been recognized across the world as up to 8 years of age. However, in India, it was only up to 6 years. So, bringing this 8 year structure, up to 8 years structure as foundational stage, gives children a lot more stress free time for moving into a much more formal structure of education, which is the preparatory stage, starting from third grade onwards. So, if you have raised hands, if you would like to ask any questions, do put it up in the Q&A. If you would like to ask anything, I will be manning that. When we are ready to take questions and allow for you to talk, I will go in for the raised hand section, right? So five the reasons that I feel that we need to rejoice the NCF, and I'm sure all of you, once you've gone through the document, will have a lot more to discuss and share. Now, the first thing is that it emphasizes play and activity-based learning, and it emphasizes on usage of toys and manipulators. We will go into each of these reasons. Second is that this is rooted in India's deep traditions and knowledge systems. Thirdly, there are clearly defined learning standards, and there are also clearly defined formative assessment practices. And finally, it has a very holistic approach that brings focus on the entire ecosystem and not just one or two aspects, right? So Jyoti asks, when will the NEP be implemented by all schools? Because it's a concurrent subject. The NEP is something that will have to be first implemented by the state government, whichever state you belong to. Only after that, it will be mandatory for schools to implement the NEP in your school. So I am told that the vision is that all schools will have to implement NEP by 2030. When we look at the first reason that I always I've rejoiced the NCF, is that there is a lot of focus on play and activity based learning. Now, one section of the entire NCF document is dedicated to play. It's dedicated to why play is important, and whether how do we differentiate what is play and playing outdoors or having sports, for instance. I think many teachers are of the opinion that if we get children to go out and play, that is what play is. It's not just outdoor play. Play is also working with and learning with materials, learning through unstructured and child-led play, right? So one of the things that NCF talks about is choice, wonder, and joy. They say that the play should elicit choice, wonder, and joy within the child. Now, very simply to break this down, it talks about play being something that has to ensure that children have a choice when they are choosing to play, right? So, are we providing enough opportunities for choice? Because choice of what I want to play ensures that there is a lot of higher order thinking skills that gets developed within children. Then there is wonder. If the child is playing, is there wonder? Does it ensure that the child is curious, wants to know more? And then finally, there is joy. The child should be able to experience joy in however they are playing. So this has been clearly defined in the NCF. Now, when this comes in a policy document, it becomes very easy for a teacher. Like, I'm sure when as teachers, when you talk to parents, you always have the trouble that if you're telling that the child is playing in the school all the time, the parent is like, oh my God, why am I sending my child to you to play? I can make them play at home. So because they have covered something as important as play in the policy document, I think the teachers now have a lot more voice in talking about play, right? The NCF also talks about the different ways of organizing content, which is project-based approach, story-based approach, theme-based approach, eclectic approach. Now, giving different ways of organizing content has ensured that the teacher is not limited to just using of a textbook or a particular way of doing things. Now, the NCF details each of these approaches for each of these approaches is for ensuring that the teachers have a lot of opportunities, a lot of ways in which the content is being organized. And this is basically when you organize content in a particular manner, the pedagogy also follows in that manner. Pavitra is asking for an example of the eclectic approach. One of the examples is maybe you could start with a concept of a question, and based on that question, you are able to extend the extend the learning of the children. One of the things that we use at Tapas is something called as the KWL chart. It is the know, learn, and want to learn. K stands for what I already know, and what I want to know is the K. The W, and the L is stands for what I want to learn. So something like an eclectic approach is where you will, on a particular concept, say you're introducing a car for the first time. What do I already know about the car? What do I want to know about the car? And what I will want to learn about, what I've learned about the car is something that will get captured. And through the children's curiosity, it gets constructed. So an eclectic approach is an emergent curriculum where you build on what the children want to know. So I hope that I was able to give a bit of understanding of the eclectic approach. This is, I think, by far the little bit more difficult approach to follow because it's so open-ended, right? The other thing that the NCF does, the NCF lays emphasis on is the toy pedagogy, where there's a lot of emphasis on using the indigenous toys of India. I think in Karnataka we have the Channapatna toys, which are the wooden toys. I know that the government of India had organized a toy exhibition, toy fair, right? So they are promoting manufacturing of toys within India. What this is giving us is that an emphasis on toys is able to ensure that children are able to learn hands-on. Whereas till now, the emphasis has been about learning by either rote or by writing. So the emphasis on toys is taking the entire approach differently by making sure that children are learning by doing, because they are manipulating, they're using their hands to manipulate these toys, right? So I think this is a fantastic addition to the entire national curricular framework. The focus is on learning from concrete to abstract. So using of toys will ensure that whatever they are learning is something very concrete, which they can manipulate with their own hands, and from that construct abstract concepts. So if you look at Piaget's theory, this is exactly how learning should progress. Okay, now we've done a little bit of talking, and I would want you to think a little bit at this point. What I want all of you to do is make a list of the number of philosophers or the names of the philosophers you know or have heard of who have affected early childhood education. So if you can very quickly, in about 30 seconds, make a list of all the philosophers that you know who have impacted early childhood education. We will come back to what you have written down. I don't put it up in the chat window. You can make a note of it in your own notes. Great, I think that's about 30 minutes. Now, the reason why I asked this is because the NCF document talks about quite a lot of philosophers and their philosophies, which have been incorporated into the NCF document. So before I tell you which are the ones that have been incorporated into the NCF document, I want you to quickly tell me how many people were you able to make a note of? Were you able to make a note of up to 6 philosophers, between 7 and 10, maybe more than 10?
Miss Preethi,
Yes, I am.
hear me? Yeah. I would just request you if you can just turn on your video while presenting, because people who are watching it on YouTube are not able to see the PPT for now. So if they can see you while
Okay,
explaining the presentation, that will be even better. Thank you.
fantastic. Okay, we have about 30% of people who have voted. I would request all the others to vote. I'm hoping you were able to write down at least 3 philosophers, because I didn't put one poll for less than 3. Thank you so much for voting. Here are the results. Only 40% of you have voted, which means the others did not write them down. And it shows that most of you were able to name 3 to 6 philosophers. And in fact, the NCF document, and I will show that to you now, lists down 18 philosophers. These are all the philosophers who have been at some point in the document spoken about. Their philosophy has been addressed in our document. Now, why did I want to show you this? Can you count the number of Indians who are appearing on this list? How many Indians appeared on your list? So if you look at the way this NCF document has been written, there is a sense of pride in what India brings to the table. And these are all philosophers who have done some fantastic work when it comes to education in India. And I do welcome you to maybe take a screenshot and look at if you want to read up more about these philosophers. Side, I apologize. My video keeps turning off by itself. I think it's the platform turning off whenever they feel that the audio quality is poor. So I apologize. I will try and be more mindful and keep turning that on. Right? Now,
No issue.
this is a very interesting. This is a very interesting part that the NCF has really brought about, and this concept is something that is very, very beautiful. Okay, so just looking at the chat window before I proceed. Now, many of you might have heard this particular thing with the context of yoga. And some of you might have heard it from the context of child development, right? So this particular concept of the Panchakosha Vikasa, this means that every human being has 5 sheets or 5 layers of development, right? And then these 5 sheets are how all children will develop. Even as adults, this is how we are developing. And so the focus is on what can we do to ensure that the holistic development happens with addressing the development of all 5 sheets, right? The innermost layer is the Annamaya Kosha. The second layer is the Pranamaya Kosha. The third layer is the Manomaya Kosha. Fourth is Vijnanamaya Kosha. And finally, it's the Anandamaya Kosha, which is the outermost. Now, when you look at this, it somewhat reminds you of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Because we're all so used to following what the West has told us. We think of Maslow's hierarchy of needs because it starts with something which is physiological and ends with something which is where the self-actualization. So this is very similar to that, but you have to understand that this Panchakosha Vikasa was proposed much, much before anybody in the West had even thought of the hierarchy of needs, right? Just to understand a little bit about each of these and how you can do something to ensure the development of these portions. The Annamaya Kosha refers to the physiological self of a child, right? In terms of the development of the child. For instance, Annamaya Kosha is all about how am I able to my food habits, my excretion. It could be about, has the child developed a sense of their bedtime and what time they wake up. It's all to do with the physiology of the child. It's to do with, is the child able to tell when they need to use the bathroom, right? When they need to go potty, or all of that. So the Annamaya Kosha has to do with the physiological self of the child, right? Yes, some part of it is habit formation, I would say, but it's not entirely habit formation. But the Annamaya Kosha means that this layer of the child has to be developed fully, the innermost layer, before you are able to develop the next layer, which is the Pranamaya Kosha. Pranamaya Kosha refers to the energies within a body. In my understanding of the Pranamaya Kosha, I think that this also is representative of the senses that we all have. Many of us know that we have five senses. Some of you might know that we have not just five senses, we have a total of 8 senses. Now, the 5 senses we all know is sense of sight, touch, taste, smell, and what did I miss? Sight, sense, taste, sense of touch, sense of smell, and sense of hearing. Thank you for that. Yeah. So sense of hearing. These are the 5 senses that we know. Now, beyond these 5 senses, there are 3 more senses. One is the interoception, then there is proprioception, and then there is the vestibular sense. Now, these are 3 more senses that are important for educators to know. So vestibular sense has everything to do with balance, right? Where is the placement of my head with relation to the rest of my body? So when young children are developing, you know that they're when they have to learn to walk, or when they have to learn to balance, and even when they have to bend and stand up, they have to understand the placement of their head with the rest of their body. That's how the sense of balance develops. And when it is proprioception, it is about the sense of where I am with comparison to the rest of the environment around me, right? So it's about, say, if I have to jump, how much do I have to bend down to jump the distance in front of me? So that is all the proprioception sense. Then there is the interoception. So that is with relation to how I'm feeling inside. That is, how are my organs feeling? How am I feeling in terms of how I'm sitting or standing, etc. So there are a lot of senses that get developed in the early years. And all these senses and the way my whole physiological development is taking place is covered by the Pranamaya Kosha and the Annamaya Kosha, right? So how does that relate to early years education? Are we giving enough importance to the nutrition that the child is getting? Are we giving enough importance to giving multisensorial experiences for the child to learn? So these are the questions we need to ask, and the NCF talks about for developing the Annamaya and the Pranamaya Kosha. The Manomaya Kosha is to do with the voice is not audible. Okay, I'm going to turn off my video so that the voice is audible, at least to the participants who are on the platform. Am I audible now? I'm hoping that this is better. Great. The Manomaya Kosha refers to the sense of self, the sense of the self-respect, right? It is all about the sense of, do I know myself, and how well do I know myself? So the Manomaya Kosha is to learn about myself and self-respect. That's what it is. Then there is the Vijnanamaya Kosha. That refers to the development of your thinking, of your reasoning, of logic, right? So you could say that that's the development of the higher order thinking skills that Vijnanamaya Kosha comes into play. And then finally, there is the Anandamaya Kosha. Anandamaya Kosha is where the child is able to really apply all their learning. In the NCF document, they talk about being able to express themselves through different arts and crafts and stories, and being able to express themselves in different ways, and using all the art forms that bring joy to the child. So the NCF clearly talks about the different koshas and how that can affect the way your lesson planning is, in terms of how that can be developed. So I think this is a very beautiful framework for learning about how children develop and what we should do for that. So this is something that I really enjoyed reading about. The other thing when it comes to the Indian traditions, right? I think one of the things that the NCF talks about is the 5 steps that are part of the learning process. Now, the 5 steps are listed here. It starts with Aditi, which is the introduction, Bodh, which is the conceptual understanding, Abhyas, which is the practice, Prayog, which is the application, and Prasar, which is the expansion of whatever they have learned. Right? Now, if you look at this, this is so beautifully structured and helps every teacher plan their lesson very well. This is very similar to the 5E lesson plan model. If you look at the way that the 5E lesson plan model is made, you will see that it starts with engaging and it ends with being able to review that information. And so if you look at the similarities, they both come across as very concrete, very similar, right? This is a very simple way in which every teacher can plan every lesson. So if we are able to put these 5 elements into our lesson planning, I think the NCF has done a fantastic job of explaining how each of these steps are. So it will be great for teachers as well as students. The third thing that I'm learning, I have loved about the NCF is that they have described the learning standards very beautifully and in a very simple manner. I'm not sure how clearly this entire slide is visible to all of you or legible to all of you. So the NEP provided the aims of education, which were very broad aims that were provided. Right now, what the NCF has done is taken those aims of education and broken them down into curricular goals. So a simple example of an curricular goal should be that children should be able to communicate with others, with their peers, as well as older people. Now, that curricular goal is further broken down into competencies that is required to meet that goal. Right? One of the box that you will see is the competency for the same thing where I've spoken about. I spoke about communication. So this particular competency refers to converses fluently and can hold meaningful conversation. That is one of the competency defined for a curricular goal. Now, each competency is further broken down into learning outcomes. So if you see on top of the slide here, or on top of this box here, it talks about the competency, which is defined. And for this competency, what are the learning outcomes that are defined? So you will see that it is pretty well defined. And the way that it has been broken down is something that is very clear, very understandable for everybody, right? The learning standards are divided into 6 domains of development. And these are the 6 domains that you see. One very interesting learning domain that has been mentioned is the 6th one here, which is learning the positive habits, right? Or positive learning habits. I think this was something that as an NCF that is coming from an Indian context where we provide a lot of emphasis to value education, this was inevitable that they had to include this, right? The first 5, I think, more or less all of us will be familiar with, the 5 domains. The 6th domain is something that is new, and this also has the curricular goals. This domain also has the learning outcomes and the entire, this one defined, completely defined. So slides are not readable. Maybe you can share after the session as a downloadable PPT. Sure, I can do that. Sorry, I did want to bring to your notice here that The NCF comprises of 13 curricular goals for foundation stage, and these 13 are divided between 6 domains. So each of these domains will have multiple curricular goals. Now, this is the approach to language and literacy that the NCF talks about. It talks about the medium of instruction to be in the child's home language. I think this is something that has been debated quite considerably, but research shows that the mother's home language or the mother tongue or any familiar language, could be even the state language, etc., is very critical in the foundational stage. Then it talks about exposing the child to multiple oral languages before the right in the early age itself. Then the NCF talks about reading and writing in the child's home language, and finally being an independent reader and writer. Now, what you need to keep in mind here is that if it is in an urban context, right, in an urban context, the child is already familiar with some amount of English. So that is something that depends on the context that the child is part of, right? So the preference is given for medium of instruction in the child's home language. The reason being that the NCF document is not specific to a private school in an urban setup. It is for the whole country, which encompasses different strata of society, right? But what you need to look at here is that the way that language and literacy has been approached is not rote learning. It is something where they are stressing on following the reading, the listening, reading, writing, spelling approach, right? So this is important for everybody to note that the NCF does not stress on rote learning of language. When it comes to math, the NCF has done a very important um, classification of what are the areas of mathematics that is learned in the early years. Broadly, it is divided into number and its relations, basic mathematical operations, shapes and spatial understanding, patterns, measurement, and data handling. Now, by ensuring that these areas of mathematics are defined, I think there is the NCF is also solving the problem that math was looked at as something which is only with respect to numeracy, which is only numbers and only the basic mathematical operations. Maximum there was shapes and spatial understanding. Now, the areas of measurement and data handling are something that is that's not being that hasn't been given too much emphasis by many schools. So I think measurement and data handling, having included them in the areas of mathematics, the NCF ensures that teachers are getting better ways of planning their math curriculum, right? So again, there is a lot of emphasis placed on abstract ideas through concrete experiences, like we discussed right at the beginning, using of manipulatives to ensure that children are learning mathematics better, connecting math learning to children's real life and prior knowledge. They emphasize again on using math as a problem solving tool. A lot of examples are given in the NCF document on how these can be implemented in the classroom. Okay, we'll do a quick poll so that I know that all of you haven't really dozed off. And I hope that you have been listening to what has been going on.
So for the people who are on YouTube, I will just read out the question for you, and you can just type the answer in the comment as well. So how many curricular goals does the NCA for foundational stage specify? And the options are 6 and 13. If you have gone through the document or during this session, if you think, if you have noted down the points, then you might be able to answer this. So many people are voting, and you can also write in the comment section and on YouTube about the number of NCF, number of curricular goals does of NCF for foundational years?
How many curricular goals? Are there 6 or are there 13?
Are there? Yeah,
So I see that we have about 50% of the people who have voted right now.
yeah.
I hope those are voting, or if you are abstaining from your vote, that's really bad for democracy. So you should vote. However, I'm going to publish the results in interest of keeping with the time. Here it is, 50%, almost it's an equally divided audience here, where 48% are saying there are 6 curricular goals, whereas there are 52% of people saying that there are 13 curricular goals. Let me remind you that there are indeed 13 curricular goals. The reason I ask this question is because sometimes it can be confused with the domains of learning. There are 6 domains of learning and there are 13 curricular goals. So please do remember that. Thank you for taking this poll. I hope that was clear. If you need me to go back to the curricular goals and the domain slide, do let me know in the chat window. Okay, so moving on. Sorry, I got a notification that my microphone has been changed. I hope I'm still audible.
You are audible.
Fantastic.
I
So,
think the audience must say that in the comment if Ms. Preethi is audible.
if you can hear me.
Your thumbs up would work.
Yeah, thank you so much. So the next thing, the fourth reason why I love this NCF document and the things that have been covered in it is the way the assessment has been approached. And this has been something that I have experienced in the past, that many schools believe that preschoolers should have summative assessments. And when I say summative assessments, many schools give exams to preschoolers, tests and exams. But I'm really happy and very, very heartened to know that the NCF document has spoken about assessments being formative. And there is a whole section in the NCF document which talks about how formative assessments should be implemented in every school. Very simply put, it talks about the flow for analyzing the assessment or the evidence that the children are showing. And that flow is on the slide, where it talks about first is to elicit evidences of the child's learning. Right? Now, what does that mean? It means that when you are planning your lessons, you will build in certain activities where you're able to see whether the child is learned something. So it's not a test, it's not an exam, but during your lesson itself, it could be a simple quiz, it could be a role play activity that you have planned in your classroom. Any way that you can see that the child is able to express their learning. It could be a number line where you're asking children to do jumps of 5 just to see have they understood jumps of 5. So anything that you're doing which is eliciting the evidence of their learning will be the first part of the flow. The second part of it, they talk about the analysis and interpretation of this evidence. Because once you have received that evidence, what do you do with it? Today, when after a test, what you do is grade that child, and that paper or that book is just something that gets pushed into the child's bag or maybe goes home and things like that. So there isn't much that happens about what assessment that we have done. But the NCF talks about analyzing and interpreting the evidence. It talks about, so if I have observed that 20% of my class has not understood the number line concept, but 80% have understood it. It means that that 20% require a little bit extra attention. But if it is vice versa, that means that 80% have not understood the number line concept. It means that there was a problem in the way that the lesson was presented to the child. So analyzing and interpreting the evidence that we have seen of children's learning becomes a very critical part of it. And once we have analyzed it, the NCF also defines that we need to act upon the evidence that we have received. So assessment is not just about knowing whether the child has learned something or not, but it's about interpreting that knowledge that we have of the child's learning, and then further adding that into the way that we are planning lessons. So really acting upon it to see how can we change how the lessons are planned. And this, I think, is one of the most beautiful things about the NCF, because we are moving away from summative assessments, especially for the foundational stage, and looking at how assessments can be formative and can be insightful. Right? The NCF defines the considerations for assessments in the foundational stage. It says that it should be a reliable source of information. It should allow for diversity in children and in their learning. That means that you will not assess all children on a same standardized test. Right? It also says that you should not contribute to any additional burden for the child or the teacher. Remember, right at the beginning, I said that this NCF document is written with the perspective of the teacher. It's really written with keeping the teacher in mind, and so you will see that it's reflected in multiple places. Even in this statement, it says that it should not contribute to any additional burden, neither to the child nor to the teacher. So I think this is brilliant. Now, assessment is further defined, and NCF talks about having a file, a folder for each child that is maintained throughout the year. And there are multiple things that go into this folder. So it's very similar to the Reggio Emilia portfolios that are maintained in Reggio schools. So some of the things that go into this particular folder, one thing is that very interestingly, the NCF talks about the self-assessment form. And this is emojis, simple emojis that can capture whether the child liked doing this work or did not like it. I found this easy, or I found this work difficult. So a self-assessment form that the child fills up. And I think this is brilliant because it gives the child a sense of autonomy. It gives the child a sense of belonging, because they know now, okay, if I don't like it, I can really express it, you know. So the self-assessment form is a beautiful addition to this folder. The second thing, again, in terms of the learning outcomes, each learning outcome, when you are grading that learning outcome, you talk of whether the child is a beginner, progressing, proficient, or advanced with respect to that particular learning outcome. So this particular way of grading the child as from beginner to advanced for the same learning outcome shows that it's a learning continuum. And it's not that just because I have an A grade, I'm great at everything, or just because I have a C grade, I'm bad at everything, right? By allowing it to be graded as beginner, progressing, proficient, and advanced, it gives a lot more insight to the teacher as to where I need to work with for this child. And also it helps that within the academic year, that is, it could be a midline or it could be a end line assessment. If you're doing these, you know that the child has been moving from one level to another level. So it's very insightful for a teacher to know about the description or the level at which the child is with respect to that particular learning outcome. And finally, the NCF talks about the holistic progress card. Right, the holistic progress card, which is something that the NCF talks about. It refers to a multi-dimensional report, and it refers to something which is not just capturing the memory-based, the rote-based learning of the child, right? By ensuring that you're putting in a self-assessment form, you're putting in the learning outcomes and grading of the children's, level of progressing in that particular learning outcome. By doing this multiple times during the year and also taking action on this holistic progress card will again give a beautiful image of the whole child.
Miss Preeti, your voice is not audible. Check your microphone. We can't hear you. Speak now. Miss Preeti is trying to reconnect her audio. We'll just wait for just a minute. Miss Preethi, can you hear me? So sorry, everyone, that I have to make you wait, and but there is some technical issue that we are trying to resolve, and Miss Preeti is rejoining the meeting again to present the presentation to you that on NCF. So we'll just I would request everyone to just wait for a minute, possibly, and Miss Preeti will rejoin us. Hope that you found this session very useful so far. And we have just two slides left for this session, and Ms. Preeti will definitely give you a lot of takeaways from this session.
Okay, I'm
Welcome back.
hoping that it works. Sometimes you just
Welcome
have to.
back.
That's the only
So
way.
yeah, so everyone, are you able to hear? Please write in the comment section if you're able to hear Ms. Preeti, if you're able to see the slide, or just raise your hand, or just give an emoji of thumbs up, so we will know.
Okay, so we were here, I believe, on this slide. We will try and finish at the earliest because I know that we've already been here for more than an hour and a half now, almost. So thank you for being patient with us. This is a new platform for me, and I think that it's been a good learning. Um, anyway, so moving forward, one of the reasons the final reasons that I do love the NCF document is because there is a there is complete understanding of the child development, and so there is a importance given to the holistic development, and not just the holistic development of the child alone, but of the entire ecosystem that surrounds the child, beginning with defining the principles of child development. Where the NCF talks about the principles for child development, where it talks that every child is capable of learning. I think as adults, we forget that every child is capable, and we sometimes believe that some children are better than the others or more capable than the others. So I think these principles set the tone in which we have to accept the NCF, that care is essential to learning. Each child is different and grows, learns at a different pace. Children learn through observation, imitation, collaboration, and concrete experiences. Children learn best when they are respected, valued. Um, Audio is still very low. I hope that I will speak a little louder because I don't want to mess with the audio again. Children learn best when they are respected, valued, fully involved in the learning process. Play and activity are primary ways of learning and development. Continuous opportunities for children to experience, explore, and experiment with the environment are important for learning. Families and schools are partners in children's learning. Now, when you look at these principles, right, when these 8 principles you are looking at, you know that if you have a checklist of this, some kind of a rubrics in which when you look at your curriculum that you've designed for your school or the lesson plans that you've designed for your school, are they meeting these principles? Are they covering every principle? Are they able to make sure that these principles are considered while the planning happens? If you're able to meet these 8 principles, I think that every school is doing a fantastic job in implementing the NCF document in letter and in spirit. Now, the holistic approach continues. The NCF talks about how the planning is for teaching. So the teacher has to understand. We spoke about the Panchadi, which is the 5-step learning process. Differentiated instruction, that means that there could be children who are of the same age group but are of different capacities, capabilities in your classroom? So are you able to provide differentiated instruction for those children of scaffolding and of gradual release of responsibility? The NCF has done a brilliant job in talking about the gradual release of responsibility, where the children are, they are more self-reliant and become more able to take care of themselves. It talks about building a positive relationship between the teacher, the family, and the communities. It talks about learning through play, like we discussed right at the beginning. There is a lot of emphasis given on play. Before this, I think play was considered as a bad four-letter word, unfortunately, because learning was looked at as the opposite of play, because a work and play don't go together is what the concept, the perception was. So the NCF has done a brilliant job in talking about how learning happens through play. They've given multiple strategies for literacy and numeracy by ensuring that there's something called as the 4-block approach to literacy and numeracy, which talks of how each concept is introduced to the child, right up to how that concept is presented by the child. So the 4 blocks of learning, 4-block approach to learning is very well defined for literacy and numeracy. Finally, it also gives a lot of emphasis on creating a positive classroom culture. So in respect to discipline and the classroom behavior, the NCF has gone on to describe the different strategies that can be utilized for creating a positive classroom culture. Beyond this, also, the NCF defines the environment, the immediate environment of the child, using the environment as another teaching resource. It talks about the TLMs, or the teaching learning materials, that the teachers can create in order to make learning a lot more effective. So I think the entire ecosystem is something that the NCF touches upon. Just to sum everything, the NCF document enables and empowers teachers, right? It also ensures that there is, it defines how an appropriate learning environment should be. And so there is a lot of information provided by the NCF about how to make learning joyful, how to ensure that the adequate pupil and teacher ratio is appropriate. The age of admission is something that is quite being debated quite a lot now. So by defining these things, the appropriate environment of learning has been ensured. There is a role of academic and administrative functionaries that has been defined in the NCF document. So it talks about what the principal's role is, what the teacher's role is, where they should be, taking the support of each other and working together. It talks about a presence of adequate teaching learning materials, access to adequate teachers, etc. It emphasizes on the role of parents and communities. I think this is where the NCF has gone above and beyond just defining what the learning standards are. It talks about how learning is complete only if the parents and community are part of it. And finally, it also talks about how we can leverage technology to support and accelerate learning in the foundational stage, right? So I think Divya is asking what are SEDGs. I am unaware right now, Divya. I think I'm really stumped at this point, so I might have to come back to you on that. I hope that's okay. Thank you for bringing that up. That is something that I'm curious about, so I will go back and learn about that. Leveraging technology is something where we are looking at completing this entire ecosystem. So these were few things that the NEP has highlighted and which the NCF has gone into detailing completely. And so I think that kind of brings us to the end of what I had prepared for today. And I have just touched the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the NCF. It is a 360-page document, and it goes quite in detail with how the foundational stage can be made something which is enjoyable by every child, right? So as you know, this is only one of the framework that has been created, and 3 more are going to be created. So they've also ensured that the flow will happen between the NCF documents. So the NCF for foundational stage will feed into the NCF for the preparatory stage, and that will lead into middle stage and then the secondary stage. So that kind of completes what I had prepared for. So, thank you, Gunjan. That is the socioeconomically disadvantaged groups, that is SEDG. Thank you for sharing that. So, Syed, I think that brings to the end of what I had thought will be appropriate for discussing today. If there are any questions, I'll be happy to take the questions.
Thank you so much, Ms. Preethi, for taking this session and taking further this initiative for teachers and educators. And we are open for questions for this session. You can write or you can just raise your hand and we can unmute you and you can also speak.
I see that there are about 11 hands raised.
So just unmute. I've unmuted. So I've unmuted Miss Gloria. So if you want to speak, you can ask your question.
I think it's just easier if you have questions, just type them out in the chat window. There is one question I think, Said, you should take. It says, is there any certificate given for this workshop?
Yes, yes, we will send everybody, the participants who have participated, who have attended this workshop, with Tapas Education. We will send a certificate on your registered email address, and that you have attended this workshop as a participation in it. So you will definitely get a certificate for participation in this. So, ma'am, there are a few questions you can just see. There is a question by Ms. Veena. Give a concrete example of toy learning.
Okay, so this is something that I love talking about. How do we use materials for learning any concepts? And I think the best way for talking about toys becoming a part of learning could be talking about manipulatives for math. So we could even look at how learning can happen using materials which is like your dice. It could be using different toys for, it could be board games that you're using for learning of math, etc. So that is one way. It could also look at how toys are used in your role plays. It could also be a reflection of the culture of the society. You could make toys based on the stories that you're reading in your class. It gives the teacher an understanding of how much the child has really imbibed what the learning has been, if you allow the children to make toys and represent what their learning has been. So toys, I think, are a sense of joy. And it's not necessarily that it has to be only a particular doll or a particular way that it is. For a child, a block is a toy where they make it a phone, or it could represent so many different things. So I think what the NCF talks about toy-based learning is to provide a lot more hands-on material for making learning more enjoyable and more concrete. I hope that answered your question. Can we get this PDF? Sure, Sajani. I will share the PDF with Syed and then he can share that with all of you.
We will share that with you.
How can we implement toy learning for math for higher grades? So Presently, toy-based learning, we are talking about the NCF for the foundational stage, which is up to grade 2. What happens to toys is that it becomes a lot more manipulative as you grow into the higher grades, as you move into the higher grades. So it could become to do with experiential learning and activity-based learning. That's what the NEP recommends. But I think we will have to wait for the NCF with regards to the higher grades to come out to know more how toy-based learning is going to look like. There is a question about, does our government provide teaching learning material for teachers in PDF or JPG format? I think when we are looking at TLMs, teaching learning materials, they're not necessarily only something to do with displaying on a screen. This is also material that is made by the teacher for ensuring that learning happens. I'll give you a very simple, I think Veena is asking what's the difference between a TLM and a toy. A teaching learning material could be a simple chart that the teacher has created to describe even a rhyme that is being done in the classroom. So that could be a TLM in the classroom. A toy is something that allows the child to manipulate, and that it allows the child to pick up, use, and create their own story around, etc. So a toy is something which the child is able to manipulate a lot more easily. A teaching learning material is something that's created by the teacher in order to be able to communicate that concept that she wants to specifically show. Another difference is a toy is a lot more open-ended. It allows the child to do as and what they please with the toy. A TLM will have a specific goal in mind in which it has been created for disseminating information. In one academic year, how many times can we take formative assessments? Since formative assessments are done through the lesson planning itself, it is not something that you're planning for separately. Formative assessments can be continuous. It means that you can continuously assess the children in the classroom because there is no strain on the child or there is no stress on the child. The formative assessments are done through the observation of the teacher and not necessarily as a sit down a pencil paper test. Right? So it can be done as many times as you prefer, but that is something that as an institution you will have to decide on in terms of how can I communicate or how often is it possible for me to do these assessment in order for me to be able to understand and analyze it. So I think it depends on the institution and the number of teachers, the resources that you have, etc. I think Shankar is asking about the URLs for the TLMs. I think this would be very specific to the concepts that you're teaching, so it is something that you're creating. There aren't really URLs that I'm aware of. If anybody else in the group is aware of, please do share. Vidya is asking about for story-based theme, the concepts are introduced through stories or stories would be done to reinforce the concepts. So story-based curriculum is usually done in a manner where first the story is introduced in the classroom and then the learning is built on top of the story. So for instance, if you take the Thirsty Crow from the Panchakosha stories as an example, if you were to first do the storytelling in the classroom about the Thirsty Crow, the lesson planning would be done to build on top of these stories. So what are the concepts that this particular story can elicit? It could be about birds, their habitats. It could be about water, scarcity of water. It could be about, why is it a thirsty crow, about intelligence, about what are the other ways that we can solve the crow's problems, etc. So I think it really leaves a lot of open-endedness in terms of where the learning can go. So a story-based theme will be where the story is first introduced and then there is construction of knowledge based on those stories introduced. Veena, sure, you can speak with me directly. You can take my contact details from inside and we can share ways that you can speak with me. I'm going to skip a few of the observations and just move to the questions. it's complicated to divide the students in grades based on their capacity or learning capabilities. Most of the parents won't accept we think so. I am not aware, I'm not clearly able to understand what you are referring to. Maybe you can be a little bit more specific. Are you referring to the grading of the learning outcomes and where the child is in terms of each learning outcome? Vinaya, if you can be a little bit more clearer in what your question is. When should written work be given for child according to NCF? Okay. So this is something I think as early childhood educators. So written work in the language and literacy, the where NCF talks about is writing comes after uh, the child has gained some amount of expertise in listening and reading, and that's when writing is introduced as per the NCF. So I hope that answers, because I think we've been doing reading and writing simultaneously, whereas the NCF refers to how reading has to precede writing. So only if there is certain amount of expertise that the child has gained with respect to reading, writing can be given. It also talks about readiness for writing before writing itself is given. So Rashmi asking for one lesson plan model. So Rashmi, it depends on what kind of pedagogy you want to use, which way of organizing content you want to use, based on which your lessons can be planned. So again, you can be a little bit more specific about what lesson kind, what kind of model you want. One thing that I did mention here is the what is there on in the NCF document is the Panchadi, which is a 5-step learning model. Or you can use that as a basis for your lesson planning. Another one which is very similar to Panchadi is your 5E lesson plan model. So maybe you can use that. The TS Pinterest does have a lot of ideas on TLMs. So Divya, continuing with what a story-based curriculum is, we need to select a story every month for introducing concepts or lesson plans. Yes, so you can look at what the learning outcomes are, the expected learning outcomes, and or you could even look at the curricular goals. And based on the curricular goals, you can select stories which will help in reaching those curricular goals and introduce. It doesn't have to be monthly. It depends really on how much time we have for each curricular goal in an academic year. And based on that, it could be a story which can be explored longer, maybe spanning over 6 weeks, or it could be something which is a very short story and spanning over just 2 weeks. So that really depends on how you want to plan your entire curricular goals. So the 6th domain, which is the positive learning habit, I think it refers to developing, ensuring. In fact, one of the curricular goals is about ethics of learning, right? So the 6th domain about the positive learning habits is about learning ethically, about being accountable, being responsible. How can these become part of the way that the curriculum itself is defined? So this becomes one of the goals. So I think this domain is something that is unique to the NCF. This is something that I haven't come across earlier. I think it refers to developing habits which will make sure that children are they know how to learn and not just what to learn. So I think it's about making those habits a little bit more permanent with the children through the way the lessons are planned itself. And with that, I think we will stop with the questions. Said, is that all right?
Yeah. So, well, there are a lot of people who have also asked questions on YouTube as well. So I'll just read out to you, and if you can answer that, that would be helpful. So, well, it's not a question, but a concern, I would rather say. So the question is from Shashikala Patil. So NEP is a boon, no doubt, but neither government nor private sectors are not yet training facilitators even today. Would it be possible to implement without training?
Certainly not. I think there is no way that we can implement the NEP without training. But what you have to keep in mind is that this is a massive undertaking for the government, right? There is something called as an NEP, and which was a policy document, which is just a visioning that has happened as to how education should look like in India. And based on that NEP, all the infrastructure to implement that is being developed in the last 2 years. The NCF for the foundational stage is one of the things that has been done for making sure that the implementation of the NEP happens. If you have an opportunity, please do read the Nipun Bharat, the document that has been released, because that clearly defines the stages in which the NEP will be implemented in India. So do read the Nipun Bharat, which will give you a little bit more, what do I say, a positivity that yes, there is a plan for implementing the NEP. So don't lose hope. It's been just 2 years since this policy document has come out. Like I said right at the beginning, the vision for NEP to be implemented is 2030. So they've really given the time required for whether it's a private or a government institution to adapt themselves and learn and grow into what the NEP is recommending.
Okay. So, well, there is a request from Mr. Sandeep he has requested to arrange a webinar on pedagogy in future. So we'll definitely plan something for that as well. Thank you for the suggestion. With that being said, I think it's been almost 2 hours that we did this session with a lot of technical problems, and I thank all of you who stayed with us since beginning of the session. And well, there is something for you as well. First of all, I would like to thank Ms. Preethi for taking this initiative and taking this session after so many technical problems since the beginning of the session and coming back. So thank you so much. And I think and I believe that all of you must have taken notes of all the things which were shared today. And I will also share the presentation with you after the session is over. All the people who are watching it through YouTube live on YouTube, thank you so much for being patient and thank you so much for being there because not everybody was not able to join on Zoom meeting. And I am really sorry for the technical issue which was there. So coming back to what we have for you today, first of all, I would like to do two polls. So my first poll is for everyone and people who are on YouTube, you won't be able to join, so you can write the answer for that. First poll is that it's a question. I've started the poll. The question is, would you like to attend a live session on stress management and mental health for teachers? So the options are yes, no, or maybe. So if you are a teacher, educator, principal, vice principal, coordinator, just tell us your opinion whether you would like to attend a session on certain topic. We are getting a lot of votes. We are getting a lot of yes and people on YouTube, I want you to be more participating in this. You have been be very patient in this whole session. I know that you were not even able to see the presentation as well. So actually, the reason why you were not able to join this session because we were not expecting so many people to register for the event. We were expecting around 200 or 250, but we got an overwhelming response of 750 participants who have registered. So it was something that we were not expecting, but we will be ready with something better next time when we have the session. So many people, more than about 66% people have voted yes, and 1% have voted no, and 10% have voted maybe. So that's fine. Well, we will go with the 87%. So here is something that we have for you. We have a session which is scheduled for uh, 12th of January in the evening because we know that everybody is working on a working day. So we have this session on 12th of January on stress management and mental health for teachers. And you can register for the event so we can keep you updated with that. I'm also sharing the link of it on YouTube message as well, and you people can register for it, you people can join. I think there is some issue, so the message is not getting shared, but we will also share it on YouTube as well, on the WhatsApp group and email as well. You will receive the update and you can join. So let me just So here's the link on YouTube as well. You can click the link and join as well. You can register for the event. It is on 12th. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming for this session. I have another poll for every one of you. I know that there were a lot of problems, but still, I would request a feedback from you. How much did you like this session? How much useful it was, apart from the technical part, but the presentation that Ms. Preethi gave? You can just write, the rating that you would like to give on YouTube Live as well, like between 1 to 5. How much did you like this session? So it will be very useful for us to do certain further sessions even more. We will also resolve all these technical problems as well. Yes, there are a lot of people have participated in the poll. I want more people to participate, as about few people have left the session, but there are a lot of people, around 185, and around 105 people have voted. And I see a lot of fives, fours, and threes. Thank you so much for voting for this. And yes, as you people are voting, I'll just wait for a few seconds for you to complete the voting. Okay, thank you so much, everyone, for voting. And I'll take this as a feedback, and we will keep on scheduling more and more webinars like this. So that being said, we will end this session here, but there is another thing that about Edjobster. We are doing this session for the community of teachers. We have built a community. You are in that community now, as you have registered also. So we'll keep on sending you more updates about the sessions that you will be interested in, that will be useful for you. The next session is about stress management for teachers, and we don't talk much about it. There are a lot of problems in that area, so we'll have a session on that. And and we will keep you updated for all the things that are happening. And we will also share the presentation with you, so it will be useful for you to use that, those, take notes from it, and also implement it in the classroom. So after this session is over, you will be redirected to our Edjobster homepage. And to just give you a brief why you will be redirected there, because Edjobster is actually a hiring platform, hiring tool for education institutions, and we are launching by the end of January. So we are creating an early access program for our school leaders, for principals, and people who are into the hiring process. So if you are into the hiring process, a hiring manager, or you are into the process of hiring within your organization, then you can sign up. You can just join the waiting list for it. So when we will launch the product, as it is going to be a hiring season for schools as well for the new academic year, you can get the early access to that software to hire for your education institution. So that being said, thank you so much, Ms. Preethi, once again for taking this seminar. And thank you so much, everyone. We will now end the session. Have a great evening.